Hey bookmarks and bookworms, welcome back to the channel. Today is a really exciting video. I'm going to be giving you my live reaction to this year's International Booker Prize 2024 shortlist reveal. I have the video waiting to go, but first I'm also going to give you the 6 books that I predict are going to be on this year's shortlist, and I'm going to be giving you my full reviews for the books that I have read from this year's longlist. So many people have been asking me for these in the comments, so I'm really excited that I have actually done what I didn't think was possible, and I have finished my International Booker Prize reading for 2024. Who saw that coming? I certainly didn't. Starting off with what I consider to be the worst is Not a River. And I know there are so many people who have liked this book and so they're going to be horrified by this, but I thought this was absolutely awful. And I am putting the blame on the structure of this novel for why I thought it was so bad. Whilst the translator's note at the very end of the book does explain why the structure is the way it is, I don't think that justifies the novel slash novella slash poem. That just was an absolutely horrible reading experience. This is an 88-page poem, not an 88-page novella. The translator's note at the end describes how the words on the page are supposed to look like a river, kind of lapping up against a shore, and the words therefore are sparse, but then everything else was sparse. Plot development, no. Characterization, no. Any kind of character that you could sink your teeth into at all, no. And even if you're going, okay, right, so poem, maybe poetic language, maybe it's going to be really nicely written, no, it was so dry. This is really stripped back to the absolute bare bone, and I don't like minimalism in my life or in my literature, it turns out. This book actually has this really interesting paradox going on where the plot and the characters aren't interesting enough to warrant any more pages being spent on them, but at the same time there weren't enough pages for anything meaningful to be said, and so it's in this really middle category of why does this exist. Having read the first 2 books in this very loose trilogy on toxic masculinity, I read Brickmakers and then I read The Wind Lays Waste, and they were both absolutely excellent 5-star reads for me. And so the idea that this is the final installment is kind of a slap in the face, to be honest. This is such an anticlimactic train wreck of a last novel that I can't even believe that this is how Selva Almada wanted or thought it would be appropriate to end her trilogy on this. This apparently has literary language and a visceral lyrical intensity, but I disagree with every part of that assessment, and the only thing intense about this novel is my hatred of it. Next up is Undiscovered, and I was initially excited about this book when I heard the premise until I read it, and then it just seemed to go downhill progressively. I know we haven't heard this argument enough from Booker Books since the prize's creation in 1968, but just in case there's anyone out there who hasn't had this drummed into their skulls yet, colonialism is bad, folks. I read the whole thing, but I feel like I could have walked away after the first 10% and still gotten the main takeaway from this novel, which is exactly that. Colonialism sucks. After the halfway point, she just becomes whiny and doesn't actually expand any more on her original point. And this is going to make more sense to those of you who have read it than those of you who haven't, but I just feel at some point she needs to get over the fact that she is related to this guy. He was a product of his time, and we all come from somewhere. No one is descended from a line of saints. We all have a past, we all have ancestors who I'm sure weren't always doing the best thing, and so live in the present, because living in the past will drive you mad. There were some really crazy, kind of off-the-wall, out-of-nowhere sex scenes in the last 25% of the novel that just felt really jarring with what had been the theme for the majority of the novel, and then it's like last 25%, let's get sexual in here. Like, it just came out of nowhere. For example, a woman follows our protagonist into a bathroom and then goes on to sexually assault her. Then our protagonist is penetrated by another woman using a glass shaft, who then proclaims after the act to having decolonized her, which at the time literally made me want to throw up in my own mouth, and even now talking it back to camera is just so cringy and actually a little bit insane. We then cover her 55-year-long marriage to her husband in about half a page, and then she goes on to write a letter to her daughter, basically explaining how her sex life with her father was on fire, and just for no apparent reason we switch from colonialism to graphic descriptions of the world's most earth-shattering sex until the end of the novel, which at this point came as a relief. The only redeeming feature of this novel is the fact that, as a character study, this is fascinating. You are watching somebody who hates themselves and can never remove the part of themselves that they hate. We all have parts of ourselves that we particularly don't like, and some people can change that through whatever way they can change that. But this is somebody who fundamentally cannot change the part of herself that she hates, because it's her ancestry, it's her blood, it's her DNA. It's like the one thing that is impossible to change about yourself, which feels very philosophical, to be honest, because we all have demons, and some people's demons drive them to things like mental breakdown, suicide, depression, all of these things. Because what makes you who you are is not only every part of yourself, but also your ancestors, the people that came before you. So as the reader, you can see that what this woman needs to do is make peace with who she is, and the reality is, instead, she's choosing to fight it tooth and nail, getting into weird romantic attachments that make her feel something other than self-loathing. And the idea that this is autofiction is actually the most illuminating part of this, because this is somebody laid bare, and the vulnerability in this is actually pretty impressive, I'm not gonna lie. It is really rare for people to be able to pinpoint and acknowledge the darkest parts of themselves, and this is somebody going further than that. This is somebody writing it down and publishing it to the world. Often a lot of our darkest parts are hidden behind a veil, and we never open the veil and show other people the darkest parts of ourselves. And she's doing that, which is wild to me. That is so another level of handling what she's going through. And so as a result, this feels like a cathartic piece. This is a piece for her, for the author. This is not necessarily a piece for us. I don't think this taught me anything apart from slightly more about the author's psyche, because no one is dense enough to think that the world needs to hear the colonialism is bad message for the nth time, right? She's not a stupid person. Everybody knows that you don't need to say that again. So I think that's not the point. The point is it's a process of sort of exorcism of her own demons in order to basically survive. Because when you get to this point, I feel like it's survival or be consumed by your demons sort of thing. So that's kind of the coolest aspect of this, although I have to stress again that I didn't enjoy reading this, and even though I can appreciate that element of it, it doesn't make up for the fact that a lot of it was just what? Talking next about Lost on Me, I can't really talk about this too much because this is currently on my currently reading pile, and so I don't really feel like I can speak at length about this book, but just it's going well at the moment. And for those of you who are members over on my Ko-fi page, which is always linked in the description box, it's similar to a Patreon where you get videos every month from me. Lost on Me will be in my April reading wrap-up over on that Ko-fi page, so do check out the link in the description if you want to access that video and all of the videos. Next up we have What I'd Rather Not Think About, and me, along with a lot of other people, were concerned going into this book, as we have a sibling or a brother, and the idea of looking at something where the brother commits suicide didn't feel like something that we would want to read about. But I have to tell you, as someone who has finished this book, oh my god, I think this is my favourite book from the entire list this year. It was so good, from the writing to the characterization to the feeling that it evoked. It made me laugh, it made me cry. It was such an emotional, warm hug of a book. And for those of you worried about the suicide thing, it really isn't. The suicide itself is kind of like briefly mentioned, but it's not about the sort of, okay, suicide happens in the first 10% and then this other sibling just basically spirals and it's basically some sort of trauma porn for the rest of the novel. It's not that at all. It's her reminiscing on their life as kids, their life as like in their 20s, and the personality of her brother, and it's kind of being told in this weird sort of present but foreshadowing thing. So it's almost like she's telling us, she's reflecting, but at the same time she's using present tense a lot, and so it's like you're in those moments in their teen years and their kind of early 20s years, as they're just kind of being really great siblings to each other, and they have such a lovely relationship, and it was so nice. And yeah, I think that at the heart of this is kind of sibling love, basically. And so yeah, rather than thinking, okay, I don't want to read this because I have a sibling and it's like their suicide and that's kind of an issue I don't want to talk about, sort of thing, or read about, that's actually what makes the novel. Like, if you have a sibling, this is going to hit so much harder in terms of, in a good way and in a really positive way. It will make you want to go and text your brother or ring your brother, and yeah, because it's really special. And as you can see, I'm grinning talking about it because it's just such a nice book. And also, can I just say, it's flawlessly written. This was so impressive on so many different levels, but from a piece of writing to how it made me feel, just across the board, this was so good. So I'm quoting from the book here: "My brother's life was a series of poor survivor decisions." Survivor, the TV series. "But the stupidest thing he ever did was break his alliance with the only other contestant he could trust, the one who would have given him her last grains of rice, who would have carried him on her back to the finish line if it came to that." This has completely surpassed all of my expectations for it. Thought this was quick, engaging, funny. This is a beautifully written ode to the brother-sister relationship. They speak about having classic arguments and kind of going back to them, and I thought that was so funny because you've known this person for, well, at this point, like almost 3 decades, and it's the same for me and my brother. And so you've known this person for so long, and it's sort of like you knew them at every single stage, and so you can bring up old stuff. They talk about still having ways to annoy each other even as adult siblings, and the dynamic that plays with their now adult partners as well. The hierarchy between the younger and the older, and then also just the unending amount of love and tolerance that you have for this person because they've just always been there, and so you love them, and because it's just unending, they're just always there. And then the tolerance also, because you know all their bad habits, all of their good habits, and everything in between. For me and my brother, I'm the older sister, but he acts like the older brother. So I kind of, whilst I'm older, I think people would maybe say he's older because, I don't know, for example, if we're going on a walk together, he will want to map read, and he'll be like, no, I'm in charge of the map, I'm in charge of the route, like, you just follow where we're going, sort of thing. And then if I say, oh no, I want to map read, la 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 la, he would be like, Charlotte, point in the direction of where we parked the car. And I'll be like, this. And he'll be like, and that's why I'm map reading, we parked that way. Next up, I'm going to talk about The Details by Aya Jemberg. It's probably the least memorable of all of the books, just because it wasn't good and it wasn't bad. It was just kind of there. The point being made through this very short novel, kind of, it's basically a novella, it's very short, is how you view other people. Is that a reflection of them or of you? Are we how we see other people? And whilst I can appreciate the writing of this, it's definitely suiting my literary tastes, I just can't get enthusiastic about it, and that is why this book is kind of middling in this list. And lastly, of the books I've read, this is Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck. If this isn't a masterpiece, I don't know what is. I was in awe of the writing, the characterization, how an author can put this together so eloquently. The context becomes a character in itself. We're in the GDR, East Berlin, and we have 2 characters here, one of whom is kind of 50-ish years old, and so he knew what it was like before. And we have one character who is 19. And so this is in kind of like set in 1988, and so she has grown up in the GDR. She doesn't know anything different. She doesn't know what it was like before, and she doesn't know what it's going to be like after, although she doesn't know that. And so it's really interesting dynamic because you have 2 characters who are in a relationship, but she's also, like, the author has also made this to be kind of, these characters are the state as well, sort of thing, the 2 states. Like, we have we have kind of like old Germany, kind of East Germany, West Germany. Is it old Germany kind of pre-divide, pre the divide of Berlin, or is it post-Germany? And so you have, it's a total, the mastery and the craft in knowing how to do that and how to make characters be their settings, if you like, and see the parallels going on between this couple who have a 30-year age gap in them, and so who come from different worlds, sort of thing, whilst sharing the same world in this moment. Just the whole thing with the socialism, and then also seeing peeks into West Germany as well, just the whole thing was so sublime and so amazingly done that it's hard for me to even put into words. It's almost like I don't have the words, like Jenny Erpenbeck does, to even be able to give this a decent enough review. It was so good. Let me read this bit for you because I think it's so good. She wants him to hit her, wants it purely out of the desire that it does her in. A long time ago it was a game, now it's deadly earnest. Now the reality has touched her. He hates her and he hates himself. She hates him and she hates herself, and they both know it. Not until he realises she's been crying for a long time under his blows does he stop and put the belt away. Is this what birth feels like? Literally, it's so good. There's so much stuff like this. Like, I'm just scrolling through my Kindle because there's just so much that I've highlighted. It's ridiculous. Oh, this is another line. The fact that you lied to me is one thing. Much worse is you lied to yourself. You must ask yourself why you did that. To someone who is open to such self-deception, I can only advise one thing. Keep your hands off art. Oh, my God. And then here we have a bit that touches on that, what I was trying to explain about the characters reflecting basically Berlin itself being split in half, because this 50-year-old man is also married and he's having an affair with this 19-year-old. So if I didn't make that clear, I kind of assumed by now that you all know what it's about or have read it, so I just don't need to explain it. But it says here, a man who loves his wife has a relationship with another woman. She doesn't put the 26-year marriage in doubt, as she makes no claims to exclusivity on the man. And so you can see there the direct parallels between how, yeah, this 19-year-old is basically East Berlin. That's what she represents. Her youth is obviously a big factor in this. Her naivety, her immaturity, contrasted with his. He's very much in the driving seat of this relationship, and it is abusive at times, if not throughout, obviously, because he's 30 years older than her. But it's not sort of graphic in this sort of kind of sexual romantic relationship. It's not graphic in that. It's not, if you're kind of feeling like, okay, I don't want to be triggered by some sort of really abusive relationship. It's not that. I've been filming for so long, this video is going to be ridiculously long, but I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about Crooked Plough, is the one that I DNF'd. So I DNF'd, just to recap, Via Gemito, Mater 210, Dictator Calls, and Silverbone, and I explained those decisions in my sample video. But in my sample video I said I was going to continue with Crooked Plough, so I'm going to give you the reasons as to why I DNF'd it, having read on to the 25% mark. So for me, the reading experience of this was just boring. I couldn't connect to the characters, the plot didn't seem to have anything. Yes, in that first 10% she chops off her tongue, but after that there's not really a lot that happens, so I abandoned ship at 25%. Other reviewers have said that the political, racial aspect in Brazil comes in the final third of the novel, which sounds about right to me. Like, it's 2/3 of essentially waffle, where we get bogged down in tangents and sentences that don't push along either the characters or the plot, until the author eventually gets round to making his point in the final third. I don't know why authors insist on doing this unless they're being paid per word, in which case I completely understand. Have as many tangents as you want. Then finally, before I tell you my predictions, there are 2 books on the long list that I will not be reading, just because the first one is White Nights, and this one is literally impossible for me to read. I cannot get a copy of it anywhere because of the publisher that it is produced by, and I live in Bali, so it's just not going to happen. And the second one is Simpatia. I'm not going to try and read this book, I think. I might do if it's shortlisted, I guess. But to be honest, I read Paul Fulcher's review on Goodreads for this, and it was just too good for me not to share it with you. I'm sure most people know who Paul Fulcher is on Goodreads. He's like, has a review almost for every book that I read. So he's prolific, to say the least. But he had just such a good review, I have to read it out loud. So this is the part for me where I was like, yeah, no, not for me. Right, so this is what Paul said. I'm quoting directly from him. He says, "One of a number of gratuitous porn scenes which should make this a shoo-in for the Bad Sex in Fiction Awards." And he's quoting from the book. When Ulysses opened his apartment door and let her in, they threw themselves onto each other hungrily. Nadine came quite quickly. Her orgasm wasn't one of those stones that falls in the water and spreads into waves. It was more like the burning heat of an axe, brief and rough, cutting through wood with a single stroke. Almost without pleasure, Ulysses hurried and buried his you-know-what inside her you-know-what. He didn't move until he felt the last drop leaving him, his blood turning into hot snow. What the fuck? Okay, this must be a translator thing, right? Because no one's writing hot snow. Oh my god. Are we talking hot snow as in water? His blood was water? Are we talking hot snow as in steam? Because if his blood is steam, he's dead. Bye. That must be translator error, surely. No one is writing hot snow. Hot snow. I can't. Okay, are you ready for my predictions? So, the first book I'm predicting is Not a River by Selva Almada. If there is a judge that lobbied hard enough for this appalling book to get onto the long list, then their superpower is clearly mind control, and so I have no doubt they'll be able to get it onto the shortlist too. The next book I'm predicting is The House on Via Gemito. Nothing else on this long list has been referred to as a masterpiece by Booker itself, so surely they have to back their own opinion here and submit a masterpiece onto the shortlist. Surely. Next up, I'm predicting Kairos, because it would be total devastation for me personally and literature in general if this does not get onto the shortlist. It is clearly one of the best books on this list, if not the best book technically on this list in terms of literary merit, execution, writing, contextual appreciation, research, just everything. It would be a crime against books if this was not on the shortlist. Next up, I'm predicting Meta 210, just because strategically this is the only novel from the continent of Asia. You can hardly say an international shortlist spanning 2 out of the possible 7 continents. I mean, even for Booker, only 2 in an international prize is pretty bad, so I think they have to include this one just so they can get that 3rd continent included. The next one I'm predicting is What I'd Rather Not Think About. Now obviously this is just a purely heart decision for me. I'm really hoping that this gets on, but out of all the ones I've chosen, I know that this is probably the one that may not make it onto the shortlist, just because I'm going from an emotional perspective and a heart perspective. This was my favourite, most enjoyable book. This was probably even better than Kairos for me in terms of enjoyment and kind of that heart feeling in a book, that 5-star feeling. And so yeah, for me, I am kind of, this would be what I'd really, really love to see on the shortlist. And I'm putting down my sort of more logical, what would the judges think and what would they do sort of thing. So I've got everything crossed for that book getting onto the shortlist, but out of the 6 that I've predicted, I'm probably least certain about that one. And then the last one I'm predicting is Crooked Plough, just because I hated it, and there's always that one book that gets onto the shortlist every year that the judges love and I hate, and I think this is it. So I expect Crooked Plough to be there. So now, finally, having literally spoken for 45 minutes, I'm going to go through hell in the editing process for this. I'm going to play the shortlist reveal on YouTube, so I'm just going to get it up 1 sec. I'm actually really, really nervous, if you can't tell. I'm so nervous for this, but I have the video up. Deep breath. Right. Okay. I don't know why I'm so nervous. It's like they're my books, but they're not. Right. Just play it. Okay, I can already see the edge of Not a River, which, okay, fine. Like, I didn't think it was good, but it's on the long list. It's on the short list. And my heart is pounding, I don't know why. Oh, okay. Yes! Kairos by Jenny Erfenbeck. Yes, get in there. This was so good. I'm really excited for more people to read this because I feel like so many people have written it off and don't. Like, you should definitely read this. Oh, okay, The Details by Aya Jemberg is on there. I did not predict that. The Details. Yeah, I'm kind of mad about this book. Oh, okay, Meta 210. Okay, yes, I was correct. Because they needed that Asian representative on the shortlist. Okay. No! I'm so happy about that. Oh my gosh, What I'd Rather Not Think About has just popped up and I'm so happy. That music's probably really loud for you, by the way. Okay, Crooked Flowers just popped up last and I don't even care because What I'd Rather Not just made the list. Oh my god. I am so happy. Get in there. That is so good. Oh my gosh. I am so happy with that shortlist. That is such a good shortlist. That is a killer shortlist. Both of my 5 stars are on there. Kairos and What I'd Rather Not both made it. Clearly, I have supreme literary taste. I have really just outdone myself this year. I think I did so good with that. Oh my gosh. I've just realised. I predicted 5 out of the 6. I'm essentially savant. I knew it. I knew it. I knew I could tap into the spiritual realm, and this just proves it. Man, if I got that other one right, I would literally have predicted the shortlist. That is so crazy. Clearly, me doing my tarot readings has really been paying off. It really can, tap into the judges' brains. And yeah, 5 out of 6, I'm really happy with that. That's so cool. Right, so at the end of this video, if you have learned nothing at all other than go and pick up immediately, run, don't walk, go and pick up Kairos and What I'd Rather Not Think About, because they are both absolute supreme novels. I loved them so much. The other 4, you can kind of make your glacial way through them because I didn't really like them and you're not going to be able to discuss them with me. But if you would like to come back and fangirl/fanboy over Kairos and What I'd Rather Not when you get round to reading them, or if you already have read them, leave your comments down below and we can chat about them because I love the hype for these 2 books. One of the 2 of them better win is all I can say, because that would just make my Booker International 2024, it'd be like the cherry on top of the cake. I had such a good time reading these novels. I still have Lost on Me still to finish, but that is me done for International Booker 2024. Apart from when I film obviously my live reaction to the winner being announced, which better be Kairos, to be honest, because it's just literary excellence. But I would obviously love if What I'd Rather Not won, although personally, if I was a betting woman, I would put my money on Kairos winning. Not any of the others. I don't really feel threatened by any of the other 4 on the list. I feel like my 2 books are going to win it, and one of the 2 of them is going to win it. And yeah, having already got 5 out of 6 right, I think I'm going to be right about this one too, and one of mine is going to be the winner. So I shall see you whenever the winner is announced, and until then, make sure you subscribe to my channel because in a few days I'm going to be posting my best books of the year video so far. So if you would like some quality literature recommended to you, then stick around and subscribe. But bye for now guys, so nice to see you.